Hello, welcome back to the HypnoDivergence podcast. Hope everyone has been well since our last little get together. My name is J. Robert Parker, joined today once again by Jess and Molly. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to like, subscribe, and all of those good things. Social media, standard plugs. You all know the routine by now. Don't want to bore you with all of that. How's everyone been doing?
I never know what to do when you do that.
I know. I just like putting people on the spot and seeing how they react. I think it's just a personal flaw of mine.
It's fine. I think that Jess and I reliably react the same, which is
I know. It's
we both
become
ignore you and like
it's become a routine. I feel like it wouldn't be a podcast without that 2 count of awkward silence when I put everyone on the spot. I feel like it's become a trademark at this point, so I just have to keep doing it.
great. So I'll just keep reacting and then
Exactly. It
in the
is.
headlights. If I don't move, he can't see me.
The camera won't track. It's fine.
But how are you really, Molly?
Very pregnant.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, we are going to have another little Molly soon.
It's
So,
no baby.
well, either way. Molly is a with child, so.
Yeah.
But I am not, if anyone was wondering.
Yeah, it's not me and J Rob's child.
No. No, I meant I myself am not pregnant, but,
I'm all done with having babies. I'm
Yeah.
adjusting to my first fall of not homeschooling.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
that's
So I'm
a large
retired
amount
from
of free time.
homeschooling now.
Retired from homeschooling. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, it's an adjustment.
That, absolutely, it is. And that kind of, it's a good transition, kind of, to what we were wanting to talk about today. And we chatted about this before we started recording, but we're going to talk about
No, I do.
sustainability. And this all came from the other day. Molly and I were chatting, and I've been interested in at least partially converting my property over to renewable energy, put myself off of the power grid because I live in the middle of nowhere. Then we've got an awful power grid. But it got me thinking about sustainability in other ways because it's not just about environmental practice and things like that. It's
hmm
personal practice as well. And we really have to make sure that our habits, our life, the way we are going about things is sustainable, that it's not going to drain us just like with the renewable energy. So and I got this idea from talking to one of my clients, which you know who you are if you're listening. Calm down. But he's very much this rise and grind crowd, and that mentality, that practice for most people, not everyone, is just unsustainable. And I remember asking them because they had this 10-year plan, this this grand plan. And I asked them, is that sustainable? Can you keep this up for 10 years? Can you keep up this pace that is required of you? And they had never thought about that. And they had this dawning realization of no. And yeah, that's what I kind of encourage everyone to look at. Is your life, are your practices, personally, professionally, spiritually, in every way, is your life sustainable? And
hmm
so I just kind of wanted to throw that over to you guys and get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's important to recognize that there's a difference between the rise and grind and the shift, right? Like when you shift into a new lifestyle that's more sustainable, the beginning chunk of it is going to be more work than it's going to be in the long run, right? Like you have to set it up. And like there are going to be seasons and periods of your life that are going to have like more, right? but you have to find balance. Like you can't, like, especially if you're neurodivergent too, but I think neurotypical people just as well don't always even think about this. Like the bigger picture versus like the right now, that panic, that desperation mode. And like if you're in that desperation mode, which honestly I feel is very akin to the rise and grind mode.
Hmm.
It's the only way to fuel the rise and grind is desperation. And
Yes.
like that's what's guiding the motivation. It's away from energy. And you need to
Mm-hmm.
balance that away from and towards energy. Actually, like you want more towards. I feel like, Jess, you remember that with Joe Tab? It's like you
Yeah.
want 80% towards something,
Right.
then you need to be motivated by that 20% away from, right? Like you want to
Yeah.
get away from a certain type of life, right? But it's because you know what you're going towards, or else you're just
Mm-hmm.
like in fear and stagnant.
Absolutely.
Right. And you can't manifest like what you really want without that clear vision that you're going toward, right?
Yes.
You just
Absolutely.
can't. You have to have a vision of what it is you're going toward.
So inadvertent
Clear.
plug. The man they mentioned is an instructor at the school we all went to and has his own practice. And I feel like it it merits giving him a shout out. But it's this man named Joe Tabanella who is a neurolinguistic programming genius, an absolute madman. But
I call him
uh,
the Mad Hatter.
yeah, he really is
He's
wonderful
like
guy.
my
So if anyone
favorite
listening, go
ever.
check him out. So free plug for
If he
Joe
heard
because
us
he's
doing
awesome.
this, he would probably get like emotional. He's the
Yeah,
sweetest,
Yeah.
yeah. He probably shed a
the
tear
most
for talking
genuine,
about him. He
most genuine human ever.
he
Yeah.
really was one of those people that was very inspirational to me in school.
Mm-hmm.
It just because he was so unconventional, so
Mm-hmm.
different than a lot of people that I had met, and it made me realize a lot of things that about myself, like that I don't have to be conventional. That's part of that sustainability
Right.
is
Right.
the maintaining of yourself. Are can your can your capital S self be maintained?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
for an example, so I'm I'm the type of person that doesn't do well around a lot of people. And I used to be in a job that involved me having to deal intimately with a lot of people. And that was unsustainable. And I didn't even think about it in that
Mm.
time because, as you said, Molly, it's the day to day. The
Mm-hmm.
people are stuck in that desperation mode. And
Well,
that's
and it's
kind of what it is.
societal norms too,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely, that's
Mm-hmm.
a good part of it. But realizing that 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 practice was unsustainable for me, that I could not continue to interact, to give of myself, to be around that many people. But I thought that that's what I just had to do because that was my job. That's how I made money. That was the normal of my life. And it's acknowledging, actually having the wisdom, having the patience and the sympathy for yourself to look at your life and actually ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing sustainable? Can I
Is
keep up?
it working?
Is it
Is this
working for me?
working for me, right? Like
Hmm.
Right.
if you're looking at the world externally, like my family is very type A, like especially my dad and my sister, my mom even. I mean, I probably mentioned this, right? Like there wasn't a doily out of place, okay?
Hmm.
But and they're like very like time oriented, and I literally just can't do it. So like
Hmm.
my biggest thing, like J Rob said, people, like I can people. I'm fine with people. But my thing is time. Like I can't get to work on time to save my life. So I need to, and this was a huge shift that I'm still, navigating, right?
Hmm.
How do you set up a life that doesn't work with a linear timeline? And
Right.
we were kind of talking about that before, and we stopped ourselves
Mm-hmm.
too good to like get out before we recorded. But it's figuring out how to live your life in a way that's more cyclical. I said the
Hmm.
word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my mouth doesn't want to say it, but yeah. So it's figuring out how, and I call it that deep presence, right? Like, okay, I know what I can, like, what my threshold is for certain things. And I need to figure out ways to keep it within that threshold, whether that means purging stuff, emotions, whatever, or just like you need to have X amount of time to be home instead
Mm-hmm.
of go. Like I know that that's something that my partner has to work on. Is he when he's home, he's always like, "Well, let's go to the store," and he'll be like Walmart, and we live in nowhere, the middle of nowhere. Okay, not only do I hate Walmart, but it's like the closest. It's like 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't. And then we have to like be there with all the lights and stuff. Like, and our huge chunks of our day get eaten up. And like that's just not sustainable, right? So it's like all these things, like what are these actions that I'm doing, and how can I look at this, flip it on its head, and like really take what's like the essence that's important and make sure that it fits inside my battery pack, right? So I don't have to like it's like you don't want it to die in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's an excellent metaphor, really. The battery pack, like
that battery pack metaphor.
I really feel that, and it's a good thing to examine, because like a battery, how many things can you attach to a battery for how long before
right,
it's juiced?
knowing what recharges your battery and what drains your battery, but
and knowing how much it drains.
Right.
And you're not going to make your battery bigger just because you push yourself harder.
No,
it's literally not going to happen. You're just going to feel
the same
like
size.
shit.
Yeah. But what came to my mind with what Molly just said is how vital it is to identify those things that fuel you, those things that drain you, and what's most important to you in life. If you can really give yourself the time to look at those things and prioritize those things, so we're not filling up our days with all of these actions and to-dos that aren't really serving our personal like agenda in life, like what are supporting our values, supporting our quality of life. And that is so different for each person. And in our society, we like think it's like one mold for success, one mold for success as students, one way of success in business, one way of success as a parent, marriage, all these things. And any other relationship, friendship, you know, there seems to be, you know, just a few standards that we see everywhere. And it really is so individual.
Yes.
And
100%.
like, I give everyone permission to do it your own way. Figure out what way it is. If you're like needing permission, here it is. We give you permission to start discovering what way works for you, what time management works for you, what, you know, what activities can you eliminate from your life, what supports you in your work environment, and to start making simple requests for boundaries around that. Like I hear so often people who work in offices cannot get work done with the people coming and going in and out of their office or popping in to ask a question and stuff. And it's so normalized. But we can also normalize a simple request or sign on our door that says, you know, for this hour or this many hours to lunchtime, you know, please email me if you have a question, or
do not disturb.
Right.
Well, a simple sign. Could this be an email?
Right.
Even in my like relationship with my partner, right? One of the things that I've actually, especially being pregnant, started to normalize because my battery is smaller. Also recognizing things that make your battery smaller because they're more likely to shrink it than expand it, right?
You're using so much of your energy growing a human being right now.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've actually started normalizing that took a minute for him to like adjust is me saying like when things are emotional and how they're being dealt with, I do not have the space in my like battery function to do this and manage the house. So are we going to deal with this way and let the house fall apart? Or because it's true, like you're draining your battery,
Right.
and you have to look at all the factors, and like dealing with things that are heavy emotion, that's gonna like, honestly, that zaps it more than like physical stuff a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And like, where can you find something that makes your life more efficient? That's been a huge thing. And I know this is a financial thing a lot of the times, but it's not always, right? Like, one of the things that I did recently, actually, because Jess has one, is I bought myself a portable dishwasher.
Oh, yay.
And I'm very excited.
The joys of the modern world.
But I understand, like, that's a big ticket item, and not everybody has that. So, you know what else, like, is like, how else can you minimize like the amount of dishes you're using, right? Like, before that, especially when I like was early pregnancy, we were like, you know what, like, we like to be eco-friendly, but like, I'm sorry, we're buying paper plates, you know, like, like it's about, sometimes it's like, you have to realize, like, and I think this is something that, not to call you out, Jess, but that I've heard you struggle with, is that like, I want to be really eco-friendly.
Right.
But, like, it's not sustainable for me to maintain these practices.
Right. Like, being sustainable for the planet isn't sustainable for my energy and my output right now. Yeah, it is. It's such an internal struggle. And I know I can't be the only one who has that.
No,
I
struggle, right?
absolutely do. Whenever I buy something that, I don't know, for example, has an excessive amount of packaging, like it irks me. And part of that irksome thought is at myself sometimes, and I've got to check that. But at, why are you contributing to the landfill of this? And I'm sure, and this is a different type of sustainability, but it's very much worth talking about. Sustainability in general. We didn't specify how we were going to talk about that, but the one type really is kind of in relation to another, because
it is. It's all connected.
Yeah, part of what a lot of people are trying to do nowadays is create environmentally sustainable practices personally, but having that also fit into your personal sustainable practice, like, and it has to be emphasized for those of you out there that are struggling with creating like ecologically sustainable practices. Just remember that the worst violators of this are big corporations. So ultimately, the things that we do to create less of an impact on the world, to create a more sustainable practice personally, logically, is that going to make a huge dent? No, it's not. If everyone together kind of did sustainable practice, we still have ExxonMobil. However, what this is about, what sustainable practice is about, isn't like truly making that tangible impact. Though I oftentimes stress that even a small step is worthwhile. It's about your own personal, I don't know what the word for that would be.
I have
your relationship to the environment.
Exactly.
It's about building relationships. That was exactly what I was going to say, is you have a relationship with this. And in order to make that relationship sustainable, right? If you tax yourself now, trying to do every little thing perfect, down the road, it's going to come back into balance somehow, and it's going to radically shift, right? So you take those, it's a process, not a destination. You take those little steps to continue growing your sustainability, right? Like, and shifting, you're going to get there a lot more sustainably, consistently, and you're going to be able to maintain that, rather than like being like, oh my God, I just watched this documentary and now I need to like change everything in my life because
That just made me think of this mindfulness practice that I've been using lately. Just checking in with yourself and your body when you're feeling overwhelmed, or when you notice you're a little stressed or anything, and just being like, what do I need in this moment? What's one little thing I can do to support myself? And so I was thinking just now that, how can we use that same mindfulness practice with being ecologically sustainable? what's one small thing that I can do right now easily? What's one easy, simple, with what I have right now, where I am right now, what is one little thing I can do? One little shift, one little change, or one little action in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And having that kind of reframe of it, I think, is a lot less pressure. And it's a lot more empowering. It's just like, oh, well, I can just do one little thing right now. And then if you build that practice of checking in with yourself throughout the day, or even just daily, or a couple of times a week, maybe where you start, but it becomes more and more natural. And then it's a flow of doing those things that support you, support your community, support the planet, support your values.
Exactly.
It's just those little check-ins.
How you grow also, though, that has me thinking instantly, like, you have to grow sustainably, right? You can't just like be like, I want to be this person. And like, you may be able to hyper focus on it, but then you're like I had this planner that I'm sorry if I repeat myself, I don't even know anymore. But
Same.
I don't know what I've talked to you guys about separately and what I've talked to you guys about on the podcast. So I'm sorry. But I had this planner and I was trying so hard to like be like a planner person, okay? And it was like one of those happy planners that has all the fun stickers and all this stuff. And like for a few months, I was so good with it. On top of it, it was my thing. And then I lost track of it. And it took me like 2 years to figure out that it was a hyper focus. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why did I like stop doing that? Like I was really into it. Oh, because it was a hyper focus on a specific type of planner, not a sustainable thing. And like, I actually, to like bring that hyper focus into it, I've been writing a blog post on hyper focus. And it's really been like getting some gears turning, right? Like, okay, a lot of times I feel like we hyper focus to cope with the outside everything, right? We get sucked into something and we don't have the like desire to get out of it because the rest of everything has such little dopamine in it for us that like we need to balance it out somehow. And our brains, like especially I feel like neurodivergent brains, they will push you into balance against your will. Like whether it's rest or like dopamine with hyperfocus and hyperfixation, like it wants to bring your body into like this state of balance. And so if you're not creating that sustainably, it's going to be harder for you to pull yourself away from those hyper focuses to do the other things like the dishes and the laundry that, although it's not like your favorite, like it makes you feel good to have done, right? Like it's not easy because you're hyper focusing on other things and your life is so busy and blah, blah, blah and unsustainable, right? But like I found connecting with like the relationships of my house and my life and thinking of them all as relationships, building that deep presence, doing it for that reason, the reason of I'm deeply connected and this is because I'm deeply connected, not out of obligation. Like that's sustainable, at least for me,
Exactly.
Right.
And you mentioned the two dreaded things, dishes and the laundry. And I can't sit here and tell you that I'm good at either of those things. That's still something that I really work on, but it is all in creating it's that reframe of how am I viewing this task? And if you view, let's say, the laundry as this arduous chore, that's not sustainable. There's going to come a day in a couple weeks or a month or tomorrow or a couple of years that you just freak out, that you can't take this burden. You crack. You look at the laundry basket and you just it's
the laundry basket,
the laundry mountain,
the laundry mountain,
laundry
or
floor,
whatever your laundry storage facility is, be it basket or home.
Yeah,
the home is a laundry basket. You see,
is more laundry baskets. So like we have like an unnecessary amount, ridiculous amount of laundry baskets because that's his solution. It's like, well, we need more laundry baskets.
We just
that's
need more storage.
Like, I don't think.
Well, I mean, it is a solution that could work for someone.
If the problem was we didn't have enough laundry baskets, it would be great. The problem is he's a giant, so like one outfit is like a whole load of laundry.
The whole basket.
And then there's the rest of us. And our
I didn't even
dogs
think
are
about that.
disgusting. So we have,
Yeah, one of his shirts is probably as much as a couple of your outfits, so
I'm actually going to be to the point very soon where all I fit in are his clothes. So
Oh, that's convenient. That is convenient.
I told him I'm going to get a few new pairs of like sweatpants for him because I'm going to wear them at the end of my pregnancy. And then we won't have to just get rid of them because like I'm small naturally. Like I'm not going to fit in the next size up. I feel like I've maxed out on sizes that I can like sustainably use after pregnancy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the efficiency, right? Like
yeah, absolutely. And it's
stacking functions, as they say in permaculture.
You to circle back to the laundry and to the dishes, because I'm sure a lot of the people listening right now, that's
some people are like, do we have to? Do we have to circle back
and that's the thing.
Dishes?
Like people hate that. I'm sure everyone listening right now is like, oh God, he's going to talk about it more. But
hold on, pause
even I am.
Take it with you to the sink or to wherever you wash your laundry. Bring it with you, and then you can use escapism and disassociate while listening to this while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I do.
And that's part of creating that sustainable practice. Okay, so you hate doing laundry, so what can you add to that
Should we just start every podcast episode with,
have you done your laundry?
Which chore are you doing while you listen to today's episode?
I'm trying to love you.
I mean,
I kind of feel like we should. If you feel it would help you, no pressure, not obligation.
Yes.
I would love to support your executive functioning journey.
Absolutely.
If you really struggle with rest, we encourage you to take this opportunity to rest while listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
And then we'll use our hypnotic voices.
But yeah, no, if 100%, y'all have my permission to listen to this, doing whatever you need to do to keep yourself going. Add
judgment-free zone.
And word things that this is one thing that I've also started saying to people, because I use that term deep presence all the time, right? But I know that probably doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't hit the same way as it does for me. I think of it as like being in relationship, deeply present. It's not about me. It's not about my environment. It's about like the blend of the oneness. And that feels great to me. But like, if that doesn't feel good to you, like pick your own words for it. I don't care what you call it. Because it's not about using my language. It's about using your language that helps you.
Right. There's lots of ways to explore it. One of my mentors, Kate Northrup, author of the book Do Less, I learned cyclical practices from her and how to shift from that. I'm still learning. Let me correct myself. How to shift from that hustle culture that we've been talking about to syncing up with our natural rhythms, whether it's your hormonal cycle, whether that's the cycle of the moon, whether it's the seasonal cycles. There's so many options of places to start getting back in that natural rhythm that works for you and your lifestyle to support you in a way that humans are biologically meant to operate.
Yes.
That natural rhythm, like, is that language is so important because we were just talking before this too. Like, my ancestors are Sami, which is like tribal, and so they also were nomadic, and like it's not that far away from where I am now. So genetically, that's probably why I have such a hard time with things that aren't that cyclical timeline, that linear timeline. They didn't use time, like it wasn't a thing. Like, I think they still don't. But like at some point, all of our ancestors were there, right? Some much further back, right? But that's like, time is a construct. And like Jay Rob and I were talking about the other day.
I was about to say, oh God, are we going into this?
It's not even a thing. Like that linear time, like linear time is just like a way to view it. Like it's not even an accurate representation of time. So it's hilarious that people say to me all the time that like I am time blind and have no concept of time. Like I am more aligned with the real reality of time than like you'll ever even begin to understand, even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Like to the people that say that to me, not to you guys. But like time is a construct and like it's fairly new. Like credit scores, those started in 1989. Like the things that rule our lives and crush our souls are like in their
Pretty
infancy.
new. Yeah, pretty
Like,
new. And we're made to think that this is the way that it's always been. But
and it'll
like,
always be, but it won't.
go back to
Yeah.
like 1500 and ask someone what time it is, and they'll look at you weird and point at the
High
sun.
noon.
And like, go, what do you mean? What time is it? It's midday.
Check the sundial.
Yeah, like look up.
I didn't mean like I meant I was gonna Google when time started.
Oh, you might get some weird answers for that one.
Yeah.
But we are so beholden to this system that is a construct, and this conversation we had bled over with me and my partner, and like time, our clocks and watches and our obsession with all of that. That's all a construct. Time was created to organize a day, and that's not how we did things for most of our history. We were naturally in a rhythm of the world around us. And so often we try to become into a rhythm of the clock, of making sure that our rhythm adheres to that timepiece.
So
And what'd you find?
okay, I just got excited and didn't know when to interject. But
Oh, go for it.
so also it says it references the 1800s and it just made me think of you. This specific question says, how did they tell time in the 1800s? And it says, in the 1800s, the three main sources of determining time were the clock at the center of your town, the railroads, and the sun. But it would not be uncommon for all three to tell you different times. So in the 1800s, even, which was like not that long ago, time was a loose concept still. It would be like early afternoon, I'll see you somewhere. And it's like
high noon. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like a span of like loosely an hour or two, right? Like if that's how I function. Like I do best with that. Like we all meet that way too. Like I'll roughly be there. Like we'll do our best.
Yeah. And that's
My ADD brain is now filled with all the songs that contain the word time. Just right now, this is what's happening up here.
Awesome.
Yeah. This morning, my brain woke up to singing that song that we learned in school that's not even accurate anymore about the oceans, the Atlantic, Pacific, the Arctic.
Oh, yeah.
But there's 5 oceans now. I don't know if you guys knew that. There's 5 oceans apparently now. They've changed. They've changed their minds.
Just like the planet.
There isn't new water. It's
reorganized.
New names for different areas.
Stable.
It's like, is Pluto still a planet? Are eggs
Well,
still bad
wait a
for
minute
you?
though. The oceans are different because ice is melting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And erosion. And
so there's more of each ocean, but like there isn't suddenly a whole continent that sunk all at once that created a new. But that would just link 2 oceans together anyway. I don't know.
I don't know what the committee is they use for naming the oceans, and frankly, that's
yeah. You think that we could put those great minds to use on like sustainability?
I like to imagine there's a group of like 30 scientists in a room somewhere just having intense arguments over how many oceans there are in the world.
And who gets to be named, what the next ocean needs to be named after. Like, no, it's me.
Yeah, I get
it's my last name.
But, so, we talk a lot about, like, environmental, personal sustainability, and how those things really pretty much connect. I know many people who are trying to be environmentally conscious that practice just doesn't work out. You are struggling in your life to attempt to maintain the standard. Usually because we want all of this change to come at one time. And
Hmm.
I'm sure you guys see it in a lot of your clients. I see it in some of mine. People want people just want to be different. They want to change. They want their life to be totally different and how they
Hmm.
want it to be. And that's wonderful because you have created a vision for your life that you want. And that's good. That's the first step is to truly see who you want to be. But to try to be that person, to live that life in a week, is that sustainable? Did you truly change
You have to
everything
set a
that you need?
foundation for yourself,
You have
right?
to create a foundation. You have to build
So
from that foundation.
an imagery metaphor
Hmm.
that instantly came to my mind was thinking about like a rock in a river, right? How long it takes to wear it down so it's smooth. And even if you expedite that process, right? Like we have a rock tumbler.
Hmm.
There's still 4 or 5 stages that you have to change the grit in between.
Yep.
And like
Hmm.
it still takes like 2 weeks. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's the fast route.
Yeah.
You can change your mind in an instant. You
Absolutely.
can reframe something in an instant, but you still have to use repetition to create
Hmm.
new neural pathways
It
to
must
keep you
become
there.
a habit. It must become a
The
Yeah.
practice.
And you have to make physical changes in your environment to support you, to give you that
Hmm.
foundation, right? So it is one part of it is instantaneous. Like you
Yes.
can
The
change,
choice is instantaneous.
yes,
The decision is
to take
instantaneous.
action. That's what
Yes.
but
it
we
is.
have
That decision
to
to
put
take
all
action.
the supports in place takes time.
But like
Well,
for an example, let's say you want to go green. You make that decision. What
Hmm.
are you going to do? Are you going to go immediately replace every system you have with the green alternative and then struggle to create a new routine, a new habit, a
Right,
new world? Or do you
or
right.
do a
just,
lot of research and then
yeah,
panic
And then never
and
take
then,
any action
realize
because you're
and never do
there
overwhelmed.
is
anything? Yeah.
it's not
Yes,
black and white, right? Like you're like, oh wait, hold on. When I recycle, only
well,
like 12% of it is actually being used, and then they throw the rest in the trash. And the recycling
right.
center is like way far away from me. So maybe it's like, what can I recycle that's going to have the biggest impact
Hmm.
And
instead?
Well,
then
y'all,
save it up.
we keep talking about this on a personal level, but what about community? We
Yeah,
haven't
Yeah.
talked about sustainability on a community level.
that's a
And
big one.
in the United States, at least in our society, that the
Yeah, you
community
want to
has
talk
been eroded
you want to talk
and
about
dismantled,
unsustainable like
right? But if we
Well,
really want to make a difference in like ecological sustainability and supporting individuals in their own sustainability, like the community
community. Yeah.
structure needs to be rebuilt and in a sustainable way
Yes.
to
Absolutely.
support a sustainable community so we can support one another so we can make bigger things happen
And that's when we
on
are talking about
on
a
a
real impact.
planet level.
Yeah.
there are
Right.
some fantastic things though that I will say. I don't know how like how in where this is. I know we're all in different places, but like here, I mean, also I'm in Vermont. I mean, it's community orientated a little differently. I live in a shire town, but that's what it's called because I'm a hobbit. But so we have these, and I think it's like a bigger thing on Facebook too, but where it's the like buy nothing groups where like you just post the things that you want to get rid of and people are like, I need that, or they can request it. Oh, I have that in my garage, I just haven't gotten around to it. And then you just like stick it on your porch and they come and take it.
Oh, that's
Like
We
cool.
have
it's
a
less
free
work than,
cycle Facebook group for my city.
it's kind of
So
like
that's
that, but we used
similar.
to be in a free cycle group, and I feel like this is actually more efficient. I don't know the way that they go about it, but
Yeah.
also it could honestly just be the same thing. But like I think a lot of communities have those, and it's a really great way to build community because like I've ended up picking up or dropping off things at the same place more than once, and like then you're like, oh hey, like it builds like relationships with in a way that you may not otherwise have time to, and it's like sustainable towards your wallet and the environment and all of these things at the same time, but it also works in your life because You literally just drive by and grab it from their porch. Like, you don't have to do this whole thing. So
I think the pandemic really got a lot of us out of touch with those aspects of community, and now we're trying to figure out how do we come back, how do we in a new better than before.
We also have this program called Everyone Eats, where the government, there's like a grant for the state government where they buy from local community owned restaurants and eateries. They'll buy X amount of meals, and then anybody in Vermont, it's a thing, like, you don't have to prove income for this stuff. I know in most states, like in New Hampshire, you have to literally have your tax return and freaking thumbprint. I don't know. It's
Means
ridiculous.
testing
it's
is the devil.
So, but in Vermont, it's just we just are going to trust you to do what you need.
Yeah, no one should go without food.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't have to prove that you need to eat.
That's
so you just, at these specific times, you just drive through, and it's literally food from all the best restaurants around town.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
The restaurants, so they don't struggle to stay open as much, right? And it funds those restaurants, and it feeds people. And it's just this really creative way to navigate it that isn't just government stipend food that tastes like cardboard and actually doesn't help anything locally in your community.
That's a really good idea. It supports the local
it
business,
connects
it
people
feeds
to the community. It gives people dignity, and it's
right.
beautiful.
Yeah. And you get to try food that you might not necessarily try, and
right.
Then in the future you're like, oh wait, let's go to that restaurant.
And who knows what connections will be made between those people that never would have been connected before, these new customers and these businesses and the people working there. Who knows what it can lead to.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's an excellent example of creating sustainable practice in the community, because ultimately that whole idea, that whole practice started with one person going, hey, what would be a good idea? And then following that.
Let's create this grant.
The rest of the way.
Right. How sustainable can we make this grant, right?
Yeah.
We have to make this grant. We have the money to make this grant. COVID happened. We have the money. We have to feed people in a certain way. Now, how can we
Where else is our community suffering? Local businesses. Yeah.
Impact, right? And that's the thing. Most states are doing a food thing during COVID, or did, even if it's just one weird shitty box of something, and you have to wait 16 hours for it. Not all states, but most states. But it's only available in certain cities, and barely anybody has actual access to most of these things. But they could have done it in a way that was more sustainable. They just didn't, because they were going through the motions for the image, not for the result. So it's all about being that result orientated. How can I actually do this in a functional way?
Well, so we mentioned the sustainability in community, and so for our audience, for the people that connected with that, and that seemed interesting to them, what are some ways you guys think, brainstorming, that you can create a community to begin with? Because more than likely, if you're listening, there's not much of one where you are, just statistically. But and how can you do it? And it's so
right. I think we have to start with, what does your community need in terms of sustainability?
Yep.
What do the members of the community need in their own personal sustainability?
You're obviously not going to start a community garden if you live in the middle of a highly industrialized urban area. That's
you can container garden, but you're not going to start that garden without first finding out if people know how to cook with fresh foods. Yep. Then you also have to think, can we do a cooking class? Can we do communal cooking together?
Can we make a little recipe book of some sort? Even.
Right. Yes.
I actually ran a community garden at the YMCA for a few years. And the cool thing about it is we had several beds, right? And some of them were used by the preschool that I also taught at.
Aww.
But some of them were used by this group of like, it was like a PTSD group that was like doing things for therapeutic value, right?
Awesome.
So they had a couple beds. And then because I was running this program, I got to know, and then there was a couple that were just like shared community, whoever wanted to be part of it ones. And like whatever was excess would get put in these baskets and put at the front desk, right? Which was great. But like I got to know these different groups that I didn't even know existed in the community because of that. So like there are so many ways to do that, and it doesn't take much space to do something like that with a raised bed. Look at New York City during like
rooftops.
the Great Depression.
Yep.
Yeah, well, during the Great Depression, they had, that's where the, what was it?
Victory Gardens. Yeah.
Victory Gardens. Like they're making a comeback now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just the little things you can do. And just, that was an excellent thing. What does your community need? Take a look around. And most importantly, what does the community mean to you? What is that community? I mean, it's a
or what do you want it to be if you don't have one yet? Like,
well, kind of what I was meaning is like, for example, in a rural area, I know what my community is because there's 1,000 of us. That's we're all right there. But let's say you live in a place like Chicago. Your community might be the floor of your building. It might be your building. It might be
That's
just
a really
this
good
section.
point.
Like we don't all live in areas that we can just all band together. Where do you start that community? And it might
What's
just
sustainable to define it?
Yeah, exactly. And it might just start with the floor of their building and then move to a couple floors. And that's how this starts, and it goes back to the stressing that no step is too small. Even if it's just you and a couple of your neighbors getting together to do things. That's fine. That's going to create that momentum.
What's the one first, easiest, smallest thing that you can do in this moment?
I ask that of all of my clients every time when they have a problem, because we want to look at this huge issue. Like, let's look at the environment. It is this huge, looming issue.
It's so overwhelming.
And it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I have clients talk to me about it all the time, about how much anxiety it gives them. But and we don't feel like we can do anything in the face of this. But you can't. Nothing, because we tell ourselves that it doesn't matter if I do this, it's too small, it's too insignificant, the corporations.
But it's a ripple effect.
Exactly. It's something. It's some small positive change. And if everyone in the world got together and made one tiny little positive change, that'd be a massive change. And
think about what little change would bring you the most joy in this moment, and then doing the ones that are joyful too, because that's more sustainable, right?
And that's something
I'm trying to learn
really
to embrace that, like being led by what lights you up.
By what brings you joy and happiness. That's absolutely part of sustainability that we haven't talked about yet.
And that's contagious. That's, talk about ripple effect.
Exactly. I also want to address, if you're in a community that you have a unjoyful, like unhealthy association with, right?
Yeah.
Like you'd be amazed at how close by a community that might be perfect for you is. Like my hometown is 30 minutes from where I consider actually home. That's it, right? And I'm in like rural New England. So like I know that is, I had no interest in creating community there or being part of it because it had too many negative associations for me. And you might not be able to move right now. You might not be able to, but like, how can you still engage in that seeking a community for future, right?
That's the like community doesn't have to be where you live.
It does not. Look at us. We're all talking today from different parts of the world. And some of my closest community, most of my closest community are hundreds of miles from me.
And that merits stressing because there's people out there let's say like someone highly alternative in a rural area, somebody very rural in an urban area.
Alternative.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I figure that's a good catch-all. But I, as someone living in a rural area,
Is
I
that
feel the
what they
crap out of that.
call people?
No, worse. That's the that's the very safe word for it. But so let's say you don't have anyone, you can't connect with anyone. Online is still a community. If you need to
Right.
reach out, it doesn't matter if all of your friends are in Finland. It's fine. All
I
of
would
my
like
partner's friends
to.
are in New Zealand. Like
You have a
it's
bunch of friends in Russia. I mean, you're
yeah.
not close to them right now. It's a little difficult, but
Um, for
at
for the
the,
purposes of discussion, no, I am not speaking with any Russians at this moment. Spasiba.
I also at the beginning of COVID, when I first started doing like, I took a life coaching course and stuff, at like very early, even before like schools were out and stuff. I made a really close friend that I'm still friends with and check in on regularly that lives in Delhi, India. Like
That's awesome.
it's
Yeah.
we've been friends for multiple years and like we know tons about each other. Like our time zones aren't even like sensical, and we somehow still find time to connect. Mostly because I think he doesn't sleep much, but like it doesn't. It's just like also community. There's this balance between right finding community that you can connect with because you have enough in common, but also stretching yourself a little bit and like
Yes.
open-mindedness. Like they don't all have to be exactly like you. You can also have different opinions about things that are controversial, even maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It just has to be a unifying cause. That's all
Well,
it has
Right.
to be.
something
We can
I've
all
learned,
look after our neighbors, even if we don't have the same politics.
Yeah.
right? Too is like
For instance.
sometimes I mean I can have a conversation about things in a different way. I think sometimes than most people can like get triggered by, right? Like if it's so different. But I've realized that there are certain topics that I feel firmly about that once I actually have a conversation with somebody with the opposite identifying label, we have the
Right.
same fucking opinion. We just frame it differently.
Yeah.
I've
Like
experienced that as well.
you won't know because there's this us versus them mentality, right? Like you don't even know if you're just doing it based off of the label they identify with online. Like you don't actually know.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And it's that alone is part of that community because you can't be in a community of people that you don't talk to. So get to
Mhm.
know people. You'd be surprised. People have a weird tendency of being people and being very
Yeah.
relatable. And
And-
it never ceases to fascinate me talking to people from across the world, coming from wildly different cultures. And yeah, just having that reinforced that the human experience is pretty much the same. Like, it doesn't matter what language you speak or where you come from, what your culture is. The process of being human, of
Right.
going about your life, is the exact same for basically, for all intents, everywhere. It doesn't matter. Everyone in the world has similar concerns,
Mhm.
struggles, worries,
Mm-hmm.
loves, and yes, there are places in the world that are different. There are places in the world that are bad, but it doesn't matter because it's all people. And we have a bad tendency in this country or as people, I don't know which one it is, to for example, you mentioned Russia. We're told right now in the media to view Russians as a bad, evil people. Some of the most beautiful, kind people I know are Russian.
Right.
You
And it's
can't judge a whole
you
nation based
cannot.
on their
You
leader.
you
Right.
cannot on their leader, on their government, because I've got
Right.
some weird news for everyone
Or the
listening.
controlling religion at the
From
time.
the
You can't judge
because if
a whole
to
group
do
of
that,
people.
you have to realize where you're standing, because we're standing in America right now, and we can't point
Like
fingers like that. We cannot
it was
expect someone to
literally
view us as a person,
your
because
luck that you ended up where you are.
yeah, yeah,
Right? Like
exactly.
I mean, you could get into like past lives and stuff and all of that, great. But like in this life right now, if you're somewhere that is fortunate, even if it's like deep south that has different beliefs than you or whatever, right? Like, you could have been born on the opposite side of the border, just a little further south,
Mm-hmm.
and be like trying to flee the country from a cartel right now. Like, but in the same token, obviously, also empathize for yourself, because that doesn't make your struggles not hard, right? It's this balance of like zooming out and then zooming back in and then going back and forth to stay in balance and sustainable.
You should acknowledge and learn about the plight of others, but you should not let that learning make you judge yourself.
Right. Like shaming yourself for your privilege versus learning how to support yourself and be sustainable so that you can then have something to share and better the world for causes that are important to you, right? Yeah.
Creating sustainable behavior and views.
And it's like also too, something that I've learned is there's like 1,000 different things that I could be very passionate about, right? Like causes and organizations, but like it's not sustainable for me to pour my heart into every single one. So it's also recognizing that like we tend to choose one or two things because that's all that's sustainable, right? That doesn't mean we don't care about, just because I tend to focus on neurodivergent stuff doesn't mean that I don't care about animal welfare or like I have all of these things, right? Like we all are complex and like multidimensional, but we only have so much space, so we have to like pick and choose, right? And
and that goes to like the seasons of life that you mentioned earlier too. There may be a season of life in which you indulge your passion for one thing, and then the next season of life you switch gears into putting your energies behind another cause or learning a new practice. And that's okay.
That's the thing. It's no matter what you're doing with that, it's okay. Just because it doesn't fit the way that society expects you to do it, it's fine. And
hey, if you are a person who multitasking comes naturally to you and you're multi-passionate and you want to do all the things at once and that is sustainable for you, then do that too. Like we're all different.
Don't let somebody tell you, oh, you're too all over the place, which is what somebody would tell that person. When
that you have to pick one thing and stick to it. That is just not useful for everyone.
I was that person, and because everybody kept telling me that, I kept not doing it, right? Because I also am defiant. But as soon as I was able to step outside of that and block those people out and do it for the right reasons, I realized like I can't sustainably do everything. But I figured out what my levels actually authentically were because I was listening to myself and what I need, not what other people kept telling me I needed.
Yes, and that's a big thing. And there was a lot of contentment and happiness found with me personally in doing that and recognizing that, I don't like doing things the way that society expects me to do them, that I would much rather do these things at my pace, my way, and I've never been happier, and I've never been more productive as well. The second I stopped trying to fit into the expectations that were taught to me just by growing up where I did, that caused really a lot of struggle for me for my entire life. Like, for an example, I do not have a very large amount of availability professionally. My clients know you get 3 days a week that you can schedule with me. That's not to say I'm not doing anything for those other 4 days, but that is the amount of time that I have determined that I can be 100% present for those that need me. Could I work 5, 6, 7 days a week? Yeah, I have before. But that's going to make the availability I have of myself less. That is not sustainable. but I have looked at my work schedule and I have determined what is sustainable for the quality
Mhm.
that I need to provide to other people. And that number may shrink, that number may grow, but it's determining what I can sustain. And
Right.
it's again, it's your situation. Not everyone is in that position. Not everyone, like I said, it could
Right.
be your job doesn't allow you that freedom, your community, whatever
Well,
But
have you.
I've been thinking, how can people who are not self-employed, that don't have the same flexibility
Hmm.
as someone who's self-employed, how can they start
well,
to adjust and
Give
create
yourself
that sustainability for themselves
permission
within
for
the structure of their employment?
there is
everyone
a
has.
very powerful option happening right now, though. Everywhere is desperate for employees.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some leverage, which means potentially looking for other positions in other places where they are more agreeable right now because you have more leverage because they are so desperate that
Mm-hmm.
you can say, here are my boundaries.
Mhm.
And more of them are likely to do that. Like, I'm only open to working this many hours right now. And they're like, yeah, that's better than not having somebody for those
It's better than
hours.
nothing.
You're going to find,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
also really assess, like, where are the things that will make the biggest impact for me?
Right.
And what positions, what type of environment is going to make that like it's going to match up with my needs.
Mm-hmm.
And like now's the perfect time to do it,
And
right?
let's say you're in a
Yes.
position that you have to work 2 or 3 jobs. And I know, unfortunately, especially now, there are people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Find, since that you cannot currently make your practice sustainable, but how can you make it more sustainable? How can you
That's
make
it.
it easier? Yes, and this
Head
is
towards
not
that.
your head towards it. Take that small step. And even if that small step is you have 15 minutes in a day that you don't have to do anything, that you just sit
Or
in
that you do a
silence,
self-hypnosis, or
or
you
that you
check
do
in with yourself and you ask yourself,
whatever
what
have
does
you,
my body need in this moment?
you can find
Mm-hmm.
some small amount of time to simply assess
See?
your needs, your personal needs. Because, yeah, I recognize that there are some people out there that have to work an extraordinary amount. And if you're listening and you're one of those people, you're doing awesome. And just
Yes.
keep it up. But don't let yourself get completely burned out. Do something to acknowledge that you yourself need need to be refueled. You need to recharge your battery. And that's fine. That's okay. You're already doing more than anyone could ever expect. So take
And I
care of
Also,
think so
yourself
often
then.
people are afraid to ask for help, and that's
Mhm.
where community comes back in. Like,
Absolutely.
and we're also afraid of cutting things out. Like that's something
mm-hmm.
I noticed. I felt like I had to do it all and be it all and have it all. But
Yeah.
as soon as I was like a lot of us noticed during the pandemic, right, that we all were forced to slow down and we realized what slowing down actually felt like. And I find most people felt pretty good about a lot of it. Right?
What happened during the pandemic? All of a
How
sudden,
much are you going to pick back
everyone
up?
found their passion.
Right.
Everyone found a
Okay. And
hobby that they
everyone's
love.
passion was baking bread. But
Yeah.
Well, not everyone. We
no,
did have essential workers
Well,
still,
yes.
in
Absolutely.
the thick of it and working harder than ever. So we have to
Absolutely.
acknowledge and,
oh,
No,
give
right.
our
100%.
gratitude to
Yeah.
all of those
No,
people.
if you work
And
through the pandemic, you got stories to
yeah,
tell your
I
grandkids.
did.
Good job.
So,
Yeesh. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
that's substantial, and I can't imagine the what people have endured over this past 2 years.
mm-hmm.
And if you haven't taken the moment now to congratulate yourself on making it through everything, not that the
Yes.
pandemic's like fully over or anything, but we're on the other side of something.
But if you're here,
But
you get to
you've
celebrate
made
being
it.
here
You've made
and
it.
making it this far, right?
Not
Right.
so
Like,
a lot of people didn't make it, and you're here. So give
well,
yourself
that's the
that
thing.
congratulations.
You've made it this far in your life. Like that's a realization I had because I had a really rough childhood
Mm-hmm.
and just beyond. And I realized I was carrying that with me. And I just realized one day, like, shit, like I've made it this far. I can make it further and keep going as long as I just keep moving forward.
That's right.
It's just like the steps. And even if you were, so to go back to that topic, like, right, like in contrast to the people that slowed down by force, people sped up by force. And either way, things were either drastically increased or decreased for you energy wise. And that still brought to light, right, the sustainability of their function, right? Either you were maxed out beyond belief, or you suddenly had all this time that you had to figure out what to do with. And the thing is with that is like, you realize like suddenly either extreme makes you realize like, what could I cut out when I get back to balance? And it's really figuring that out. Like we have so many things now that you are required to have to be part of this like American like modern society, right? All the social media, all the this in your face constantly, but you don't need it.
You've been told you need it, but you
or
don't.
things you're supposed to do. Also, the things you're supposed to have and the things you're supposed to do, and they're just made up.
Yeah,
arbitrary. Like
that's really a good message to end the episode with. Is all of these standards and preconceptions that you're holding yourself to, time included, that shit's made up.
What's real for you?
What is real for you?
What do you need? What supports you?
Yeah, and don't base it off of society unless that's what you need, and figure out, what do you need? What is sustainable for you? What can,
and listen to your own inner
to yourself.
Gut, your highest self, your instincts, what your body needs, what your mind needs. Listen to your own authority.
Absolutely.
It's cause and effect, a lot of it too, right? Like it's experimental. You may not know,
everything is experimental.
but then the first step is to try, right? Like
it's not an experiment unless you actually go through with it.
But like maybe you take it off of your home screen on your phone for a while. You don't have to delete the account, but
small
like
steps.
Then you realize
turn off notifications.
Right. It's just like these little things you can do to experiment without like diving into a whole new lifestyle overnight.
I mean,
and if you feel like you have to do all the chores for all the moms out there or the parents out there, the people who are like really overwhelmed right now with multiple jobs or whatever the case, like maybe you experiment with removing one that doesn't actually impact your daily life. Like, will you be okay if the windows aren't clean?
Yeah.
You know,
play around with it. Experiment. That's the big thing.
I don't know.
No, I don't do windows.
Mine are all smudgy because my dogs just like rub themselves on it.
Nice.
I did it the other day.
It's an example, you know, there's so many things that we think we have to do.
But you don't have to do, well, I would say you don't have to do anything, but there's things you have to do. Pay your taxes. They don't like it when you don't do that.
But also, like doing your dishes, the world is not going to end if you don't make sure that your sink is empty every day, right?
Yeah.
My thing is like, did I do the oldest dishes today?
Yeah,
like,
and that's
good.
Like stocking the shelves, move the ones from the back to the front.
Right. Puts away.
And that's the thing. If it's not important,
wash those first.
Yeah. Everyone listening has my permission to blow off the dishes for tonight. Like,
it's not procrastinating. There's the difference between procrastination, because you're kind of frozen and in paralysis, or you just can't get yourself to do it, and doing a little bit, right? And it's going to feel 1,000 times better to just like give yourself permission to do 3 dishes. Like
experiment.
3 forks instead of nothing.
Exactly.
Because if you're in procrastination mode and you're frozen, you're doing nothing. So you might as well give yourself permission to not do things outside of the bare, like just trying.
If you're trying to read more, read a page or a paragraph a day. Just small little things. And that's where that sustainable practice comes in. not in dumping yourself 100% into everything that you're doing, into
Mhm.
creating a sustainable, progressive practice to be able to become who you want to be
Right.
ultimately.
Build towards the person that you want to be rather than
Yeah.
shame yourself constantly for not being that
Yes.
person already.
Yes, and let go
Yup.
of the shame and give yourself grace. Like the self-talk while doing the things is so important.
Yeah,
Like
congratulate yourself. If even
do
if
the
you
thing and
do
then celebrate.
yeah,
And
even if you do three forks, celebrate.
you might already be that person and you just won't let yourself accept that you're that person because you're not enough of that person. Like I know I've done that where I'm like then I realized all these people I like looked up to, like when my best friend actually like before we were best friends, right? I thought she was like I still think she's amazing and perfect. But like I was like, she's too cool for me because she's too good at life. But then I realized like she's also a human being and like these people that I put on a pedestal and I idolize oftentimes are closer to who I am than I realize, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't realize all of their imperfections and all
We're
of
all
their like
human.
what's behind the curtain because
We
you're not seeing that,
and it
right?
has to
But
be
you see
remembered.
what's
We are
behind your curtain.
all
And so
human.
you're not comparing the
Yeah.
same thing.
Right, we've forgotten what human is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've
We put
forgotten
people on pedestals and below us, and we've all
what being
forgotten
this
that
animal is.
we're all the same creature, all the same. Doesn't matter how much made up money you have, doesn't matter
Right.
how much of anything you have. You're the exact same. You're the exact
And
same as every other human on the planet.
well,
How can
also
we rewild ourselves a little bit for our own
Oh, yeah.
sustainability?
and remembering there's going to be seasons like this one where
Oh,
Oh.
suddenly you're like having a hard time doing things that you normally can do. This my third it took my third pregnancy. My first one was 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago. Okay, and finally at this pregnancy, I figured out how to like have reasonable expectations of myself and set myself up for success.
right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what if I am put on like bed rest? Well, I can still do what I need to do right now.
Hmm.
I still won't feel like shit. Well, I'll feel like shit,
Mm-hmm.
but like it won't be something I can do something about, right? I won't just feel anxious because my house is a mess,
Hmm.
right? Like because I've done the work to set myself up to be in a position where I can actually take care of myself postpartum. Like I
Exactly.
can nurture
Nice.
myself and love myself. And you know what? If I do that, I know I'm going to be back on my feet sooner.
Hmm.
That's the thing. That's the long game here is if you take care of yourself and are living a sustainable life, you're going to get to more than you would if you're just pressuring and shaming and diving in headfirst and trying to fix it all at once.
Yep.
That's what I did for the first like after my daughter was born, the first like 5-10 years even, right? Like it's only in the past like handful of years that I've finally realized that like I was just running in place. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
getting anywhere. No change was happening. I was on a hamster wheel of
Hmm.
trying
Right.
to fix myself when I wasn't necessarily broken. I just wasn't
Mm-hmm.
living in alignment with what works for me.
Absolutely. And that's, I guess, that's the good moral to wrap the episode with.
Yeah.
Live in alignment with what is right for you. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
One
we're
little
gonna
step at a time.
one little step. So,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna call this one an episode. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. Hope you got your laundry or your dishes done while you're listening,
Or
didn't do
rested.
or didn't do anything while you're listening. Absolutely. So, thank you very much. Remember, once again, to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on social media, all of that good stuff. And if you ever want to ask us about anything we've talked about, click on the link below, go to the website, and you can reach out to any of us individually or to the podcast as a whole at hypnodivergence@gmail.com. But again, I have been J. Robert Parker, Jess, and Molly. We are the HypnoDivergence podcast, and we will talk to you next time. See you.
Bye.